The Squid sisters have a secret. We know they aren't really sisters, but are they even squids? Okay, I know that sounds weird. They're the Squid sisters. They're Inklings. Right? Hear me out. Have you ever looked at the Squid sisters? Their ears, their eyes? They aren't normal. They're different from most Inklings. In fact, the idols in general are all slightly different from the Inklings and Octolings that we play as in the games. And this may be no accident. If we take a gander at the evolution chart from the first game's Sunken Scroll number 10, we see that Inklings' ears, being like isosceles triangles, evolved directly from the shape of their mantle. The ear shape then is indicative of their origin species. This is corroborated by the fact that Octolings evolved from octopodes, and thus have round ears, similar to an octopus mantle. And what ear shape do we observe in the Squid sisters? They aren't the regular isosceles, almost equilateral triangles like the playable Inklings. No, they're long, flat on the top and curved on the bottom. They don't resemble the mantles of squids or octopi. They resemble the mantles of cuttlefish. And who would have thunk it? Their grandfather, Captain Cuttlefish, also shares this ear shape. And it's worth noting that the idol's pupils are also different. They're cross-shaped. In real life, squid eyes tend to have round pupils, like the Inklings, whereas cuttlefish pupils are more W-shaped. It's also worth noting that while Octolings typically have round pupils like Inklings, Marina has barbell-shaped pupils, more closely resembling the rectangular pupils of actual octopodes. Of course, it's worth noting that Splatoon is fairly loose with how close or not its races are to their origin species. For example, we have seen gastropod-based species, both with full humanoid body types, and with, well, a gastropod body. Stomach foot. That's what it means. Flo, a sea slug, has a stump from the waist down, ending in a foot. And, well, one of the members of Sashimori is this! She literally just is a person with a sea snail for a head. What do you say to something like that? And yes, I am telling you that the two characters whose grandfather is literally named Captain Cuttlefish are cuttlefish, not squids. It's pretty obvious in hindsight, isn't it? Though we actually see some evidence of this in other places. Firstly, the elephant in the room, Pearl's forehead. Pearl. Ah, I can hear you now! In the Splatfest art, her ears are shaped like that of an Inkling. And she has cross-shaped pupils. What do you say to that? And to that I say, dear viewer, we're going back to the Octo expansion. Again. We just keep using the Octo expansion to justify stuff. It really packed a lot of lore in there. Do you remember this scene? Well, if we observe that scene, and better yet, if we observe her in-game model directly, we see that her ears are small and rounded, much like the mantle of her Japanese namesake, the HIME-IKA, or the northern pygmy squid. Which isn't quite a squid at all. It's more closely related to the, you guessed it, the cuttlefish, Callie's Japanese namesake as well. The Aori-IKA, or big fin reef squid, also has superficial similarities to cuttlefish, given the shape of the fin around its mantle. However, it is worth considering that in general, Splatoon character names are not always one-to-one with their species. Craymond, named for crayfish, is a shrimp. Krusty Sean is also a shrimp, despite in Japanese being named Robu after a lobster. Names in Splatoon seem to be very loose. But before you think they're not really squids is sort of unprecedented, there actually are cuttlefish idols canon to Splatoon. In the Octo expansion art book Hikara Walker, there are images of mini CDs found in C14 Stick and Move Station. Among them are this. A picture of what the book describes as cuttlefish idols. And we know for a fact that they are cuttlefish idols because the book calls them Koika, rather than simply Ika. which more correctly refers to the superorder of decapodiforms, which means it could mean squid or cuttlefish. Do you see anything familiar here? Longer ears. In the case of the darker-skinned idol, whose ears are more defined, curved on the bottom and drooping downwards. Also, cross-shaped pupils. And most surprisingly of all, on the lighter-skinned idol, tentacles that change color at the tips. A feature that is exclusive to the idols we've seen until now. And Captain Cuttlefish. Perhaps such a feature is exclusive to Cuttlefish, as the only other time we have seen this is in a member of the band Ink Theory, an inkling named Yoko. But in this case, every tentacle is fully a different color, and it is described per Inkipedia as a mutation that comes at the cost of being sensitive to changes in barometric pressure, particularly during very sunny or rainy days. That is very unlike the two-toned tentacles we see sported by these cuttlefish idols, as well as the idols in each game. And it would be very questionable for Callie, Marie, or Marina to be the capable fighters that they are if they had such a weakness. The same goes for Captain Cuttlefish as well, who is even a decorated veteran of the Great Turf War. So clearly, Yoko is vastly different from them. Interestingly, we have also seen pictures of the Squid sisters and Pearl as children in Splatoon Sunken Scroll 17 and Splatoon 2 Sunken Scroll number 1. Notice anything interesting? They aren't in the typical Inkling child stage. It is said that Inklings typically do not have a full humanoid form until 14 years of age. However, it is noted that some Inklings can develop a humanoid form early. Is that a scientific fact, though? Or a mistake motivated by misidentifying what I will, from here on, call Cuddlings as regular Inklings? Given that our only examples of this are Callie, Marie, and Pearl, I think this is worth considering. Now, it is also worth addressing that some fan artists have suggested that the cross-shaped pupils and different ear shape may be signs of Inkling physical maturity, as the Inklings we play as are much younger than these idols. However, if we reference this art from the Shio Karabushi traditional version video posted on Nintendo's Japanese YouTube channel, we can see both cross-shaped pupils and flat-topped bottom curved ears on the Squid sisters as children. And given how many frames this shows up in, and that it is corroborated by the sunken scrolls just mentioned, I feel like that debunks the physical maturity argument. And there is further evidence to be considered as well. Do you remember how we keep stressing that Inklings don't have bones? Well, what if I told you that unlike squids, cuttlefish have an internal structure called a cuttlebone, and that Callie and Marie and their grandfather, Captain Cuttlefish, have, on multiple occasions, referred to having bones. I guess that's a cuttlebone then. Squids, of course, have a somewhat similar structure, a gladius. However, it is significantly more flexible, explaining why cuttlings would have bone-like structures and Inklings wouldn't. Of course, though, this calls our past videos into question, where we use the Squid sisters' shoulder blades as evidence. Though, these are all just theories. I'm not going to say it. Now let's get through some things that can be disproven by looking at translations, as these carry less weight. Then we'll get on to the more significant examples. Firstly, we have a quote from Marie in Stage 14 of Hero Mode 2, Parking Garage.
Surprised you haven't broken any bones? Well, squids don't have bones, so never mind.
The implication of this, of course, is that Marie briefly forgot to hold the facade of being a squid, and thus having no bones. Unfortunately, as is the case with many lines in Splatoon's translation, it has been punched up for effect. Credit to Samuel Obscure Messner, translator of Team Space World, for translating the original Japanese for us, which reads as follows. Wow, this is back-breaking work, but keep going up. Though, if translated literally, it would read, your bones sure break easily, keep going up, which obviously makes no sense. Secondly, we have a quote from Captain Cuttlefish in the Octo expansion. I'm pooped, Agent 8. Gonna rest my cuttle bones here for a bit. Unfortunately, this again was punched up for the translation. In the original Japanese, what he says is more to the effect of, I'm going to take a rest for a short while. It's not so helpful. But if we look at the dialogue for Black Barely Skate Parts Inkopolis news bumps in the first game, we get something more promising. Callie.
I'm bad at skateboarding. I'd probably break a bone.
Marie.
Squids don't have bones, but whatever.
And translated from the original Japanese, this one actually still holds up. Callie.
I don't like skateboarding. I feel like I'd break a bone or something.
Marie.
We don't have bones.
Like the parking garage quote, this shows a temporary slip of the tongue. Callie, being a bit of an airhead at times, forgot to hold her facade of being a squidling, an inkling, being a squid, and Marie had to remind her in a way that doesn't draw too much attention. Of course, we do know that Inkopolis news is scripted. See the Squid Sisters' remarks during the Mountain Food versus Seafood Splatfest. But, as someone who's worked in the news industry, news anchors go off the script constantly, adding in bits of their personality or thoughts now and again, or coming up with something on the fly, and messing up all of the pre-planned camera angle changes. And they especially do this when they're talking about something fun, like a festival or an event or something. So that's very possible. And of course, it's worth noting that Captain Cuttlefish has a visible rib cage. So, Cuttlings got bones! Another thing of note is the Japanese name for the Squid Sisters, Shiokarazu. It's my pronunciation of it anyway. This is a portmanteau of shiokara, or salted fermented seafood entrails and colors. Most people are aware of the Ika shiokara implication, but what many may not realize is that Ika shiokara is typically made not with squid entrails, but with the entrails of cuttlefish. It's all coming together! But I can hear you asking now, why would they do this? Why would these cuttlings choose to hide amongst Inklings instead of making themselves known? Well, it is important to remember that this is not unprecedented. When the Octoling refugees from Octo Canyon came on to Inkopolis, instead of making themselves known, what was it they did? They passed themselves off as Inklings following a strange hairstyle fad. Octopodes were thought to be extinct after the Great Turf War led to their exile to the dilapidated human domes, and it was likely assumed that if they suddenly re-emerged without any sort of cover story, it would cause some sort of mass panic in the public, both among those who thought they were gone and among those who remembered the Great Turf War. I mean, we saw Captain Cuttlefish's deliberately portrayed as racist initial reaction to this, and he continued his well-intended but still insensitive behavior towards Marina during the Octo expansion. So, it could be problematic if such behavior became a widespread issue. So, it is feasible then that like the Octolings after them, Cuttlings would choose to hide among Inklings, encouraged by their close physical resemblance to them. Which is not unlike real-life Cuttlefish's ability to camouflage, using the chromatophores in their skin. It is then also possible that since Callie, Marie, and Pearl already have experience hiding amongst Inklings, and with Agent 8's direct connection to the new Squidbeak Splatoon, and Marina being immediately aware when the Octolings arrived in Inkopolis, these Cuttlings helped the Octolings devise a strategy to blend in. It's also possible that given the games are very Japanese in nature, the intended distinction between Inklings and Octolings is decapodiforms versus octopodiforms, in which case Squid Inklings and Cuttlefish Inklings are a different species, but considered part of the same group. Whereas octopus aren't. Completely different. Regardless, though, the fact that both Inklings and Cuttlings are both decapodiforms explains why Cuttlings would side with the Inklings during the Great Turf War. So I suppose you could say that they aren't the Squid Sisters, they are the Cuttlefish cousins. But that just leaves the issue of Marina. If she isn't a regular Octoling, what is she? Well, that's probably a question for Never, unless we get another lore exposition from Nintendo. And speaking of never stop using your noggin. Good night, everybody. Also, if you're really into Splatoon and its world and lore, check out inktank.info. Our Splatoon writer, Math, has been adding a load of stuff to it. Lots of little lore bits that are really interesting but not really video-worthy, you know? Check it out, and big thanks.